Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the EECC Complex Board for Wednesday, May 8th. I would like to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Just a quick technical note. For the last two meetings, we've been live streaming, and I think that's really appreciated. However, we were told that the sound is not always ideal, that it seemed that closer to the back, actually, we could hear better, but at the front, we couldn't hear. So we're not sure if it had to do with the proximity to the receiver. So we have moved the receiver closer to the middle. But if I can ask everyone to project as much as possible and make sure that we do have a microphone when you're ready to speak. The technical note. Next is confirmation of the agenda. Anything that needs to be added or changed? Seeing
That the board adopts the agenda for the meeting of May 8th, 2024.
Mover and seconder. Member Osler moves. Member Chapman seconds. All in favor? And that's carried. Next is declaration of accumulated interest. Seeing any, so we'll move to delegation. Our first delegation this evening is to present the draft of the 2023 financial statements. Scringer, welcome. Come back.
Hi, I think I probably need a microphone. Thank you. I want to follow the instructions. I'm an auditor. I have to do the right thing here. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Christine Scringer. I'm the auditor for the town of Almer, and as such, I'm the auditor for EECC. And I'm presenting the statements. They are draft financial statements at this point. As you know, then they go back to both of the councils to be approved formally, but it's up to this board to first approve them to go to council. And so they are draft and dated as of tonight's date, but hopefully is the date that they are approved by this board. Under Canadian auditing standards, that they stay draft until that point. So I just want to make that clear. It is a clean auditor's opinion, which means that I did not find anything materially incorrect. And so I approved them based on that. Moving forward, and again, if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to stop me and ask me if that gives rise to further questions or I'm not explaining it properly or to your knowledge. All right, so we first have the statement of financial position, better known as your balance sheet, and I'll make a couple comments on this. I will remind everyone that 2022 was still affected by COVID, and so the numbers, especially when we get to the next statement, look a little different between 2022 and 2023, because the first few months of 2022 were still COVID restricted. 2023 is returning more to what we would call the normal pre-COVID level of expenditures and revenues. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this. At the end of the year, so this is as of December 31st, 2023, this balance sheet really, not a lot of change. You'll see it comes down to what's called an accumulated surplus. It's just over 7 million. It was 7.1 million last year. And that's really, the difference is really just the amortization of the capital assets. You'll see the majority of your accumulated surplus is invested in capital assets, being the number under tangible capital assets of 6.8 million. The rest is in the reserve fund. We did do a fair bit of capital this year, about $140,000 worth. However, that was financed by the two municipalities and not taken from that reserve fund. And that's something that, as you know, those of you who have listened to my spiel each year, want to continue to build that reserve fund for future major capital projects. So where we have to do roofs, pavement, things like that, that are significantly more money than what we currently have saved. So we're building that reserve fund up, and so I appreciate that. Other than that, I don't have anything else to say on the statement. Sorry, I will say the deferred revenue. So because we are now back to the pre-COVID kind of operations, ice time is booked in advance, is paid in advance. And so deferred revenue is just revenue for ice time that is for ice cream in 2024. And so we defer it and match the expenses. Any questions on that at all? All right, the next statement is your statement of operations, and this really is where we see the budget 2023, the actual 2023, and then the actual 2022. And again, significant increase in 2023 from actual 2022. And again, that really goes back to COVID, and it's really that first line, the ice rentals, 646,000 in 2023, 480,000 in 2022. And that difference carries down to the total revenues. Couple other things, and then mission and programs again, facilities are open again, we're renting out different rooms, so that all flows through here. And interest and other, again, the interest rates from 2022 to 2023, because we all know went from 1% to 5%. So again, that money that's set aside in the reserve funds is earning interest, and that interest that it earned was higher in 2023, which makes sense. Under expenditure, so we have one item or a couple items I want to highlight here. So amortization is not something that we budget for. So 247,411 carries down to our deficit at the end of the year that isn't funded by the municipalities because those assets were funded at the time of their purchase. And then COVID-19, if you remember back to 2022 and 2020, actually started in 2020, where we got some monies from the government to do some COVID improvements or improvements that related to COVID necessities. That money is now all spent, and so that's no longer, that will disappear next year. And then the other expenditures, again, a lot are increased a bit, and again, the utilities being the main one has increased in 2022 just because the facilities were open more in 2023. And then this board is aware of the wages and employment benefit increase. Coming down to total costs, 1.5 million. If you take out that 247,000 of amortization, you're down to 1.25 basically, and that is under budget in expenditures. So even though our revenues are significantly higher, our budget costs stayed within line. And that comes down to the contribution. So the ton of Elmer and the ton of Malahide, your contributions were 287,000 versus 314,000 budgeted. So we came in under budget. Gone through a lot of numbers there. Are there any questions on any of that? Okay, you're making this easy on knowing. All right, next statement is statement of cash flow. So this just shows your increases and decreases of the non-cash items on the balance sheet. And we've really talked about them, the amortization, the big numbers of the amortization, which we've talked about. And then that acquisition of new assets, I mentioned 140,000, it's 142,054. Coming down to your cash at the end of the year. And I'll remind you too, the due to Elmer is really the Elmer pays your expenditures. This cash is really just related to that reserve fund. And I will tell you all that amount is trued up, what I call trued up, after the year end, where we put, as you know, there's a capital surcharge on the ice rentals that gets put into this reserve fund, and that gets put over in subsequent to year end, when you know the total. So that was done subsequent to year end. And then the next statement is just your statement of cash change in net assets. And I don't have much to say on this. I've gone through these numbers fairly well. We did have more budgeted for our acquisition of capital assets, as you're well aware of. And we only spent the 142 of the 353 budget, which was approved by both councils. We then get to the notes to the financial statements. I just want to highlight a couple of things here. One is if you turn to note 2D, there is a new requirement under Canadian municipal auditing standards or accounting standards that requires an asset retirement obligation to be set up for any assets that may have, for the most part, it's asbestos in the building. Because this building was built when it was, we don't have those concerns on this building, so we don't have that obligation set up on these financial statements. It's our opinion that there is nothing here that would be because of the year that this building was built. So you will see those on council, will see that coming through on your own municipal financial statements, because that's a new requirement this year. And then the only other note here that I wanted to is the note number 4, which just breaks down that accumulated surplus. And so this is where you see that capital replacement reserve fund, 161 last year, 202,000 this year. So as I said, we're increasing it, and the increase is both the interest and the surcharge that we put on this one. And the back state schedule is just a breakdown of intangible capital assets by components. And as you can see, of the $11 million total cost, 10 million is it. Any questions on any of that, Bob? Sorry. I do want to say thank you to the town of Elmer financial staff for all their help in getting these done. Auditing is done a lot off-site anymore, and so a lot of back and forth goes on, and they're great to work with.
Thank you for that acknowledgement, and thank you to you as well for the continued service. Another call for any other comments, observations, questions? Member Wilson.
It's nice to see the revenues back up in the next time, and glad that COVID is releasing its claws.
To that point, the note to the, those of you who have been around a while, the note to the financial statement on COVID has now disappeared as well, which is wonderful. Hopefully never to reappear.
That's what. Great. Thank you. So I entertain a motion to proceed.
That the report respecting the 2023 audited statements be received as information, and that the board approved the 2023 audited statements provided by Christine Stringer of Stringer and Company.
Mover and seconder. Member Barber moves. Member Chapman. Member Roddy seconds. All in favor? And that carries.
Thank you.
Thank you again. That's the evening. Next on the agenda, we have another delegation. It's a presentation regarding the roof asset management program and condition report.
Ishi.
Thank you. And Ms. Clark. Microphone. I'll turn it over to you for an overview of your report, please.
All right, good. Thank you and good evening. My name is Mike Ishi. I'm from Garland, Canada, and my colleague Monique Clark. We were engaged to do a roof condition report by Robert Johnson on the facility here. We looked at all the flat roofs as well as the upper metal roof as well. The typical roof that's on there now, so you're aware, has an average lifespan of 13 to 15 years, and you're in the range of 20 years on the roof. So you've well exceeded the lifespan of the roof system. There is some benefit to the roof that you still have, though. Part of the goal of the assessment was to see, if some of the roof could be saved and reused in the new roof system. So the proposal was including the option to do a thermographic scan of the building. A lot of people might be familiar with that process as far as looking for heat loss in your buildings. We use it in the roof system where we scan the building at nighttime after a sunny day like today, where the roof has been warmed up. We can then see the hot spots where the extra energy was stored, and that energy is where the water is sitting. So we're looking for those wet hot spots so that we know that if the roof has a lot of wet spots, then everything has to be removed and replaced. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that we find little wet spots, meaning your roof has done a good job getting to its lifespan and beyond, and left you with a solid bone structure that we can peel off the old roof and put on a new roof system over top, saving quite a bit of money. The roof system you have there today, in the industry, we kind of refer to that as a single-ply roof system or builder-grade roof system. We don't typically see them in commercial buildings unless somebody's just buying and flipping the buildings. And it's mostly what comes down to the robustness of the roof system. You're relying on a 1 millimeter or 45 mil thick rubber sheet up there, much like a pool liner. So the expansion and contraction as these rubber membranes age, they shrink. And so if you look at the condition report, you'll see all the perimeter edges of it's kind of at a large angle now. It's pulling hard against those perimeters. And so if that membrane does rip, it's going to be very hard to replace and repair for temporary, because it's just going to shrink back real fast. Some of the other risks we've seen with those type of roofs over time is at the perimeter edges where the parapets come up off the roof surface. The stress will get so high that it'll literally pull the parapets in, breaking the bricks. And so we don't want that to happen either, because that gets quite costly to repair. The typical roof system that we normally see installed in municipalities and schools and hospitals, people that have long-term assets, typically go with a multiply VUR system, which is your actual gravel roof. And they do the more advanced modern way of doing that is called modified bitumen, which we've detailed in the back of the report is a 20-year warranted option and a 25-year warranted option. The systems are designed to far exceed the warranty. So if you get a 20-year warranty, you should be looking at about a 30-year lifespan. If you get a 25-year warranty, that particular membrane has a self-healing capability, so you should see about a 40-year lifespan out of it. We do like gravel on the roof surfaces because it protects the roof from UV. The roof now has large round river rock on there, but the size of golf balls. The difficulty with that material is in the hot summer days, it gets really hot and it rains, then those rocks tend to shard apart. And then your roof traffic from your HVAC people walking around on the roof up there, those shards can easily puncture that really thin rubber sheet, leading to sporadic leaks that are very, very difficult to find. Some kind of needle and haystack situation. The rock kind of blocking our way. If we remove the rock, then we've got dirt. And because it's only one layer of roof, it just leaks right inside. It doesn't show us through a blister or something that, where that damage is occurring. So it really is beyond a needle and a haystack to find the leaks sometimes on those roofs. The multiplied modified bitumen roof system, the strength of it is, depending on what's going to set the warranty, is going to set the strength. So all roofs expand and contract, and the minute you install them, they start to wear out. So the higher the strength, the longer it's going to last. And that's really the only difference between the 20-year warranty and the 25-year warranty is the strength of the cap sheet that goes on top. There is a secondary option, I think, that we presented to Robert to add a self-healing flood coat over top, which holds the gravel in place. A lot of municipalities are going that way because of the relatively low cost to add an additional 5 years of warranty to your roof. But more importantly, it creates a self-healing environment where small cracks that happen through the wintertime will literally liquefy in the summertime and seal themselves again. And so you can see it at an extra, 10 to 15 years plus on that roof system, at a probably 10% cost increase. So you have a 20% life more for 10% more cost. One of the other big benefits of the modified bitumen roof systems over the single plies is at the end of its life cycle. If it's going to last 40 years, for example, somewhere in your 35 to 40, we could look at doing a restoration of those roof systems, which means that you can renew the roof, replace the flashings, correct any drainage issues, correct any deficiencies that are in the field, and patch them, of course. And then when that's done, we put another self-healing flood coat over top to seal in the old system. And that'll be good for another 15 to 18 years at 40 to 50% of the cost of the roof replacement. So it's a good value for you going forward because cost of roofing is only going to continue to increase. And so if you have those options available to you down the way, it's a big benefit. One of the things that people always consider too when they first look at roofing is first cost versus life cycle cost. So the roof system you have there now, typically we see them replaced on every 15-year cycle. And so if you're looking at a 40-year cycle versus a 15-year cycle, you're likely to replace that roof 3 times before you're going to replace a high-strength mod bit roof system. And then if you factor in inflation, which has definitely been in everybody's mind lately, roofing typically doesn't follow a typical 2 to 3%. It's typically in the 4 to 6% kind of inflation rate. And so if you went to the middle of that at 5% and figured out where you're going to be in 30 years or 40 years, depending on what roof system you pick, you can see that the additional cost spent today will far exceed any cost or far savings than anything you're going to spend in the future. Bob did forward a couple questions to me about the roof report that was forwarded to everybody. There were a couple questions about some safety guarding in there. We did recognize when we were walking the job site that there's a number of spots where there's some unsafe conditions as far as the Ministry of Labor is concerned. Distances from doors to the perimeters or from HVAC units to the perimeter edges where people will be working. typically that is a 6-foot radius. Some people will go with a 10-foot radius. If you're within that edge, you need to guard it. The budgets that we provided do not include those. But if you are going to bring that up to par, it is the time to do it when you do the project, because that'll be kind of, the roofers will consider it like an incidental. They're not going to be looking to make money on it. They'll just put it in as something they have to do for the project. Versus a standalone project, they're going to have to bring back craning, they're going to have to bring back manpower, they're going to look for labor costs. Where if it's built into the project, they're not going to care about the labor, it's just part of the project that they have to do. Cranes are already on site, lifts are already on site, so all those extra costs just kind of go away. That being said, safety equipment is not cheap. It's engineered for safety for a reason. So those people that make that stuff, it's a big cost for their liability. So they push some of that back onto the customer for the cost of those materials. But the roofer is going to have to install it no matter what. And we typically use a weighted system, so it's reusable if you're going to do something different with the building at some point or add on, it can be moved to a new location, reused somewhere else. So it's not a one and done, it's kind of one and used forever type situation. I guess I'm not sure if there are any other questions we want to address at the moment or.
Questions or comments? Member Barber?
Thank you. A very comprehensive report, and you obviously know your stuff. Where I got a little bit confused is obviously the extent of the project is fairly, it's a big project.
Yes.
If all components of the roof are taken into account. What I couldn't find within the report is a recommendation of how it could be phased in over X number of months or years, whatever it may be. Handle the big spots first, and then get to the ones of a lesser risk a little bit later on.
Correct.
So you address that, and I just missed it.
Yeah, it's kind of addressed in these solutions at the back based on this implementation, the dates we're going to implement them. So we broke it down into, I believe, a 2-year process there, focusing on the south part first, because that's where most of the damage is. Heat UV killing the roof faster on this side versus the shaded side of the north side. And so we recommended to Robert to do the south sides first, which would be the front section here, the canopy and the front main section that's above us here. And then to focus on the back 2 sections of the flat roof, or actually 3 sections back there of the flat roof the following year. And then depending on how budget kind of existed, the metal roof can fit year 1, year 2, or even push into year 3. Because there's a bunch of repairs that need to be done to the metal roof as well, at the overlap seams and at the stack locations up there. We've done similar work to a very similar reading to this one out in Strathroy about 3-4 years ago. I think they were built around the same time too. They've already replaced their flat roof and they've already done the work on the metal roof. It's typically somewhere between 15 and 20 years on these type of standing seam metal roofs. The overlap seams become leak issues. You don't always see them inside the ice surface because the insulation blanket, for lack of a better word, acts like a big diaper. It'll collect a lot of water for a while before it finally breaks open and lets the water come down. So you may not always be seeing the leaks, but they are likely happening and just being captured in the insulation.
If this was your building and funds were of a limited nature, what risk on 1 to 10 would you put on to the first component of the roofing system?
I would say right now, based on the age, based on the conditions we're seeing on the roof, and all the broken stones and foot traffic with a lot of HVAC units on your roof, the front roofs are definitely in the risk of probably 9, 10. They're well past their age. And the other bigger risk is if the insulation is dry, as shown by the thermal scan, which we're hoping it is, if that roof fails and that becomes wet, then you've got a substantial increase in cost that could have been saved versus going right to failure.
Thank you.
Chair, Peter Michael, I understand the thermal scan thing. I think that's a good idea because you can't check when you don't know what's wrong.
Right.
And that's been my problem with that falling. we have any way of looking or scanning the insulation underneath to see if there's actually, see where some of the stages coming through too?
So typically, you know, if you're looking underneath and you're seeing water stains in the ceiling, we know the roof's leaking there in those locations. Or if you're seeing drips come down and sometimes they don't always stain the tiles, like they might come on the ice, for example. So those would be your telltale signs. With the drop ceiling below the roof, it's more difficult. If it's a really bad condition, wet insulation leads to rusty decks, which leads to corroded decks that have to be replaced. We have our fingers crossed we never have to do that because it's intense work. It's not fun work and basically doubles the cost of the roof for those areas. So I guess the best chance of looking to know if there's like going to be wet insulation is, you know, history of leaks. You know, has there been a lot of leaks in the roof surface? More than likely there'll be some wet spots there. Around the HVAC, we're seeing some serious stretching of the membrane and signs of repairs that have been done. So we're likely going to see some wet insulation there. Hopefully any wet insulation we do find is kind of like localized and square kind of areas. If it's marbled or sporadic all through the entire roof, you know, once we get to about, you know, 30 to 35% sporadic, it doesn't become economical anymore for the contractors to try to piecemeal everything together. Just faster for them to rip it off and start over. But if it's all localized in one side of the roof or one corner or around the HVAC units, you know, that's much more easy to handle. And so the potential for savings is much greater then.
So the insulation, let's just say that, what kind of cost increase or what cost would that be to replace? Worst case scenario, what we're looking at?
So, we don't know exactly the thickness up there. That's one of the things the thermal scan will tell us. You know, based on the age of this building, it's likely going to be between 3 and 6 inches of insulation. And per inch, you're typically looking, you know, about 75 cents per inch, per square foot. So if you've got 30,000 square feet, let's just say times $3, that's $90,000 in savings right there. You know, if you've got double that insulation, then you're into like $180,000 worth of savings, versus having to tear it off and put it back. You're welcome.
Ron, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I want you to just go through the optimum timing for us to do the thermal scan so we can see if that insulation is back.
Okay.
We have a chance to film them.
Yeah, so thermal scans typically start at the beginning of April and we go to the end of October. We have to have conditions of a dry roof, which yours has some ponding water in certain spots. So we need the roof to be dry. We need conditions where the roof is that a sunny day like today, that's warmed up the roof to give us that temperature gradient. And then most importantly is we like to see, for the best results, warm days, cool nights. So spring and fall are the best times to scan, because we're seeing, you know, 20 degrees during the daytime and, you know, 5 degrees right now at nighttime. So we can see a nice, good visual of what's going on. And that's important because sometimes the moisture levels are low in spots that are just small leaks or just beginning leaks. And so we can see them in advance of, you know, taking off the membrane. As we get to the summertime and that temperature goes to 30 and only drops to, you know, 22 degrees at night, we still get results, but we don't see quite the sensitivity that we're maybe always looking for. And with your roof in particular, we've got those large rocks we have to see through. Normally it's pea gravel, so it's a lot easier to see through. With the larger rocks, it's more difficult. So getting to the scan as soon as possible would probably be ideal in this case, just so we get the best results. Even with the project being scanned, just want to make you aware too that, you know, there could be conditions, you know, new leaks could show up where there could be additional wet insulation shows up between now and the time the roof gets replaced. Sometimes we won't find really small spots, but as we're pulling off the membrane and reusing insulation, those spots do get identified. So they would be taken out and replaced because we can't leave any wet in the roof system. It basically traps the moisture, causes failure. So it's best considered as cancer to the roof. You know, we have to get rid of it. That's good. Yeah.
Further questions for our consultants? Seeing any other questions, so I'm going to suggest we'll look after the resolution to receive the report from the consultant and then we'll move to the report from staff to see if there's further questions. Everybody looks like, so we have the resolution to receive the report from the consultant.
That the presentation of Michael Isha and Monique Clark of Garland, Canada Incorporated regarding the roof asset management program condition report to receive information.
Okay, move and second. Member Kirkle moves, member Leach second. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. You want to stick around in case other questions come up for just a.
Yeah, we can stick around a little bit.
That would be great. And then I'll turn it over to Rob for your portion of the report, please.
Sure. Really have nothing further.
Need a microphone. So you don't have the borrow a microphone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really have nothing further to the report. Only to say that it's a fairly significant project, and we can see that we don't want to start this project and then have a huge amount of extras because if you don't know the condition of the installation, it's a very expensive add-on once we've awarded. So staff are recommending that the board proceed with the scan so we can better develop the full scope of a project for the board.
Thank you for that. So to clarify, this evening, we would be looking at strictly approving the scan. And then after that, we'd be receiving another report with the confirmed sort of finalized scope, and then we'd be looking at numbers and timing. And at this time, in the capital budget, we have not approved any specific amount for the roof. If we were awaiting further scoping, is that correct?
That's correct. The board decided to go further. We approved the capital. We really wanted to see what deeper dive into the roof before we get into. So this thermal scan wasn't part of your capital. So this would be.
And Rodney, question?
I have a question and a comment. The question is this scan something that we should be doing every like 10 years or so to just give us an idea of where we're at? It is not a $2,350 isn't cheap, but it's also cheap if it like if we put a new roof on and every 10 years do the scan and then maybe find some of the leaks before they get into the haystack and run and then you get really pinpoint where they're coming from. And then my comment is I think it's a great idea to see where we're at and see what's underneath it. They've cut it open and then find it. So thank you.
Wish to comment, please?
Yes, we have a lot of clientele that scan on a 2 or 3 year basis, especially if they have a lot of assets. Usually that's usually the reason why we're doing it on 3 years, because we're moving through a cycle of their group A this year, group B the next year, group C the following year, and then repeat. With the new roof system installed, it would be a warranted roof system too. So it would be a way of identifying, hey, we're having leaks, even though you may not necessarily be seeing the leaks on the inside. So in which case you could have an action taking place to get the roof repaired, which is always good. Because roofs are warranted, but they also require maintenance sometimes. And so if you're not doing maintenance, then basically it's going to show that, hey, maintenance needs to be done there, catches it, nips it in a butt before it gets bigger. But most likely it's going to be under warranty anyway at that point. The warranties that are proposed in the roof system, just so you're aware, are labor, material, and workmanship inclusive. So for those 25 years, as long as you're not poking holes in the roof with new equipment, it's basically going to be covered. So the thermal scan would be the cost of the municipality to show that there is an issue. Otherwise, it's just by visual inspection and the leak is happening. And so the warranties are basically stop leak. But if you do the thermographic scan and prove it's wet, then it also includes the wet insulation.
Member Leach.
Madam Chair to our consultant. So you mentioned that there should be maintenance done. What does that look like for the roof presented?
So around the HVAC units in particular, there's cones where the electrical lines come through the roof surface. So most of the maintenance relates to the penetration, stacks and cones. They have a mastic seal at the top. It's typically should be renewed every 5 years. It's best just to keep an eye on them, period. Sometimes if new equipment's installed or if the HVAC guy needs to run a new line inside for a thermostat, they'll push through those cone seals. And they don't typically honestly seal them well. And so then you can start creating a leak around that cone, which will grow larger. That's something that would be considered maintenance on your roof. Generally, like the flashings and perimeter edges, if they have a failed seam, that's a warranted repair. If there is a blister that does form, a blister is considered a repair and maintenance issue. Now, if you don't do anything with it and it breaks, it becomes a warranty issue. So it's kind of we'll catch you two first. Part of the warranty also includes annual updated inspections of the roof system at no charge. So the municipality reaches out to Garland, for example, to say we want the roof inspected. We'll walk the roof, provide an updated condition report so you know what's going on, the roof, make recommendations, and all that costs nothing. Any actionable items may or may not be under warranty, depending if it's a maintenance issue. So just important information to have.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, so let's proceed with the motion, please.
Yes, the report Recreation 11-24 entitled Garland Canada Roof Condition Report 2024 we received for information, and then the EECC board approved Garland Canada Incorporated to undertake a thermal scan of the flat roof in condition report dated April 7, 2024.
Thank you. Mover and seconder, please. Winner moves, Brzezinski seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you again for your presentation. You don't have to stick around. You're invited to.
Thank you very much, everybody.
And then next on the agenda is the approval of our previous minutes. So we're looking at the minutes from our meeting on March 13th. Any error or omission?
That the minutes of the EECC board adopted, that the EECC board adopted minutes of the March 13th.
Mover and seconder. Member Boswell rules. Member Chapman second. All in favor? Carried. Next, we have action items under correspondence. We have the correspondence related to all of the capital budget on the We wanted to follow up on the correspondence from Malahide. I note that in the accepting the budget, there was a request to receive additional information on the scope of the parking lot project. So I'm not aware, wanted to confirm that correspondence was issued yet, but perhaps based on, so if staff could confirm that, as far as you know.
Madam Chair, if I understand the question, you're wondering if the parking lot capital forward any further? So, no.
Yeah, I think Malahide Council wanted to get a little bit more information about the intended scope of the work for the parking lot and whether it was strictly repaving or regrading and repaving. And so just wanting to have, based on the amount that was proposed, what actually is included.
No further work has been done on that. We probably follow a very similar process that we're doing tonight with tonight's capital. Come back to the board with sort of a scope.
We can relay that to Malahide Council. It looks like, even like we're seeing this evening for the sound system, that was something that we approved, but you're coming to the board with the details of the RFP before moving forward. So that would be a way for all board members to review the scope of work. So I think think it should meet the requirement that we received from Allied Council. So thank you for that. Just wanted to clarify. Any further questions or comments on the correspondence? The resolution, please.
The correspondence from municipal partners regarding the operating capital budget be received for information.
Mover and second. The regional, and we lose seconds, all in favor? And that's good. Next, we have staff reports, starting with, the quarterly financial summary report. Move it over to you, Heather.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't really have anything substantive to add this report. Susie's been on board. We've welcomed her, and she's doing a fantastic job with labor. The revenue that we use for estimates is very close to what the actuals are. So we were estimating between 190 to 230,000. So the good news is that we're on target overall for Q1. So as I mentioned, the actuals for labor are on target for budget 2022 when compared also to 2023 Q1. The team leader is scheduling the ice time for the ice bookings, or the labor for the ice bookings. So nothing really is concerned there. We had a question from a member, I forget, was it about miscellaneous revenue. So I just wanted to explain what that is. We have that sponsorship program that Rob and Danielle were working on in 2023 that took off. And in Q1, Miller's, PacBab, Tim Hortons, Optimus Club, Uplink, Elmer Family Dental, they all have done recurring sponsorship. We wanted to isolate that revenue in that line item. I could probably rename now the sponsorship revenue, but I just left it as that. So for clarity, that's what that is. And the sponsored all of these state programs usually have capacity. So that's what it is. There was also a question about financing charges. So the financing charges are actually related to interest. So if people don't pay their bill, they get charged interest. That's all I have.
Questions or comments? We're good. Thank you for the additional comment and the motion.
That report CAO 26-24 entitled East Elton Community Complex Quarterly Report, Quarterly Financial Summary Report be received for information.
Mover and second. Member Barbara moves. Member Ronald seconds. Any further questions or discussion? None. All those in favor? And that's carried. The next report is from our manager of Parks and Recs. So regarding the member update. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Including to the members. The information report is in response to member inquiry, and I'm pleased to report on some preliminary findings regarding EV stations and handrails in the arena. So beginning with the EV charging stations, there's currently 5 stations in Elmer. Utilization of these are reported to be fairly low. There have been recent funding programs through the Ministry of Transportation through a charge on program that reads, it provides funding to EV stations in Ontario outside of the major cities, some of us around. The current grants focus on ensuring there's chargers placed every 100 to 150 kilometers upon significant transportation corridors. They require high-speed internet connections, surveillance, and hydro ongoing operational costs as well. So it's important to know, and I believe in response to Member Leach's inquiry about perhaps businesses perhaps installing these, those funding opportunities are available to businesses, grocery stores, you'll see them at Tim Hortons, McDonald's, and other urban centers. So those same opportunities are available to the business sector as well. So, having said that, in this case, it may be appropriate, as kind of mentioned in the report, to take a wait-and-see approach to see if some of our local business community, is interested in installing some of these. As there's just not the experience, right now to go ahead and install. But it should be the appetite of the board for staff to pursue this, further. It would be something that would be recommended to be considered in future capital, planning exercise. So further to that, when we speak about handrails, and thank you for the inquiry about that. Staff had met with a local contractor to determine the viability, first of all, of installing handrails if we could in our arenas. And it is a possibility in both Kinsman and East Link. The width is appropriate to install a handrail down the middle section of each stairway. You'll see within the report some technical details about the height of the railings. Basically, in both arenas, you're able to install a handrail that has a second railing underneath. You can picture follow my picture. Anyhow, the gist of that is that each of those sections can exceed 5 seats. So there would have to be a braking action there at some point. Where it gets a bit problematic is the scope of the length of the railings. They need to exceed about 12 inches past the bottom step, which makes it kind of a pinch point in both East Link and Kinsman. You're sort of running into that landing where those glass railings are. Extending past the top isn't necessarily a problem. So it's doable from that perspective. The cost is included in the report. That's really just engineered railings, doesn't include installation, and exclusive of HST, any specific painting, and then we'd likely need to have some structural engineering support to make sure, we're not going to do further damage to the building when we're going into the stairs. There is also, I think it's important, if the board were to consider this moving forward, to consider the visitor experience as well. So accessibility being key, which I think is an important piece. But having additional handrails could affect seated viewing when attending events in the facility. So again, this is another item that, should the board wish this to be pursued, would be recommended for future capital consideration.
Thank you for looking those two items. We'll start with the EV station. Any questions or comments on those? Recommend a bit of a wait and see. Especially if we fix the parking lot and then curb in the sidewalk. Install anything like this year. Number each.
So the other question I'd ask was, is there the infrastructure to provide those needed things for an EV station to actually exist? Like the internet, the security camera, and is there enough electrical capacity to support the station at this time? And what would potentially need to be undertaken to do that?
Thank you, Madam Chair, to Member Leach. Right now, staff presented a basic scope of what could happen. We certainly would take a deeper dive into those details. I can report currently we do have a security system in place that captures parking lot areas. Probably doesn't zero in your dial in as you would to protect an investment of sort. It is Hydro One that services the building here, so they would be the outreach, and there would be some infrastructure just getting the servicing where it had to go, but those specific items weren't spoken as part of the report.
So given the fact that we're looking at the parking lot, would infrastructure need to be put under the parking lot before we get a fresh pad put down? Or instead of going in afterwards, digging everything up to put it in?
Through Madam Chair, I'm might be a bit of a team sport answer here. That might be a bit of a chicken and the egg. I suppose it's when you have a raw surface, and it's, you know, before you lay your asphalt, it would be ideal, if it were the applicant committee. So in that case, before the parking lot's done, it would perhaps be required for discussion and to be a budget amendment going forward. But, you know, anything's possible with the brain on zero on the check, I suppose. If you want to do it after the fact.
Robin? Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Just kind of the beaches. We knew where it was gonna go if we were to ever do it, put the conduit in the ground for a couple of runs of conduit. You know, load the expensive stuff through the ground after the conduit's kind of cheap, but I think we have to have a better plan of where they could ever go. But it does make sense to put something in the ground rather than the ass backwards way to carry it out backwards. So
Wilson?
If it's on this side of the parking lot, they'll cross and everything, that's your best bet. It's cheaper for the wire, it's cheaper.
Member Whitman?
Madam Chair, as far as the electrical, I think, electrical's on the east side of the building. I would probably say I'll put it right there. Electricity is already there, you put it on the wall, and I'm gonna go to the parking lot, which would be a pain, to be honest with you. And as far as I could see with the handrail, I think it's a great idea. All nature is gonna utilize it, to take it's just the price of it. I wouldn't be waiting too long to do this, it's just, thank you.
Thank you for that. Just going back to the EV station then, so just want to confirm the appetite, I think is what we're gauging here. So the appetite, it sounds like we're not going to go ahead and install or price out EV stations, but as we do the parking lot, there's interest in at least keeping that in mind. It is likely a possibility that should be put out there. So clear enough for direction, Rob?
Yes, certainly. I think we have a line towards that when we're doing the parking lot. Putting infrastructure on the ground without a plan sometimes doesn't work out where it should. And I would suggest if the board has an appetite tonight to approve the EV stations, then we can coordinate the activities. If it doesn't, I think we're probably looking at putting them in after the fact when we have a chance to figure out where they should go, impact on the asphalt. Maybe we don't have to impact them. A number of different things, but I think we're probably, unless the board is prepared to authorize the EV stations, I think it's difficult to kind of coordinate it realistically.
Comments on that? It sounds like the board may not have quite enough information, but we're still scoping out a lot of the details to actually approve EV station. But based on the fact that we still have a bit of time before we get the full scope of the parking lot. So maybe we can today just receive that initial information. So for second thought, when it comes to time to scope the full work of the parking lot, perhaps then we make a decision one way or another. So it sounds like we're going in that direction, but maybe not ready for approval. Would that be fair? Summarize it that way. Okay. And then, so for handrails, so we have endorsement ready from Member Whitmer. Other comments or questions? Member Rotten?
I think I'm not sure. I agree with Member Winner. It's a fairly cheap way to treat quite a bit of safety and getting everyone up and down. So I'm pretty light on my feet, but pretty steep in there.
You need a mirror, don't you?
So I also person.
Madam Chair, in some of the looking at online images of other arenas, I have noticed the double. And yes, there would probably be some impact to sightlines, but I think that, you know, in a lot of major arenas, they do have those handrails and, host, you know, concerts and much larger scale games and events than we do. And I think the safety factor helps the sightline.
We need to adjust. Right?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through the members. One of the information pieces I didn't include in the report, but is important to know if you've kind of functioned around an arena for any amount of time, is quite often you install these features and they become jumbo gyms or slides or new fun play features. So I think it's important if this were to be scoped out further to make sure that we have an insurance point of view as well, both for accessibility and the potential risk by installing something, hoping not to be a hazard.
Okay, so one solution creates another problem, so I appreciate taking that big picture. So it sounds like the direction would be that there's interest in getting more details and further scoping and like to move forward. So we heard that from a few members. Confirm, see if that's the nods around the area. Maybe the resolution that seems to that.
So the report recreation 08-24 entitled member update be received for information, and that the board provide direction to staff to proceed with a further report on the handbook.
Mover and seconder. Checking meetings and which second. Any further questions or discussions? Satisfied with this motion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. The next report is for the renewal of the contract for the ATM machine. We'll present that. Here, for the next meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you.
For the subsidiary of the meeting, so we'll keep the agenda in order. The next meeting is actually about the subsidy of the meeting.
Okay, no problem.
Tom just wanted to know if this new prescription works, so.
Oh,
No, right, it's not.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So staff wish to promote the successful users of the EECC, and I think it's wonderful to report, in light of recent user group meetings, that these types of open dialogues have occurred and are hoping to formulate some direction for some transparency and some equity among all of our user groups, and listening to their wants and needs, I think is formal. So that's the purpose of this report, is to hopefully have some clear direction to promote success of our volunteers. So we're hopeful tonight that the board will consider providing a framework for addressing the requests of our user groups, primarily our key stakeholders, for use of our meeting rooms, spaces such as this at no cost for their volunteer board meetings, planning sessions, and things of that nature. So historically, agreements have been informal and administered for these stakeholder groups to use the space, but we're just looking to have something here. So the 4 key stakeholder groups identified in the report are the AMHA, Elmer Skating Club, Bad Girls Hockey, and the Elmer Spitfires. And it's important to note this report also addresses community programming provided through the VON through the Smart Falls Prevention Program. Staff, like I mentioned, support a transparent and equitable approach to subsidy and wish to express to the board this is the intention of the recommendations within the report. A guideline would be very helpful from the board for staff to administer, and also for our user groups to understand their expectations of this offering. So as the members are aware, minor sporting groups do receive a subsidy on their ice rentals, as well as a subsidy on interior hall for banquets and such. Elmer Spitfires also enjoy that opportunity. And staff are encouraging the board to consider this request carefully, in respect to the countless hours of community volunteers commit to offering program at the EECC. Having the framework in place as presented, I think will really help the user groups in their planning, help us manage subsidies in a fiscally responsible manner, and also avoid precedent setting where one group perhaps is giving the opportunity to space over another group. Our staff work really well with each key stakeholder group to ensure equity, but we would appreciate the board's consideration.
Comments or questions? Thank you for the thoughtful considerations of weighing all the different aspects of this request. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
That report recreation 9-24 entitled Ice User Group Meeting Room Subsidy to receive information, and that the EECC Board of Management approved the recommendations as outlined in the staff report.
Move and second. Member Wilson moves. Member each second. Any further discussion or comment? None, all those in favor? And that's good. Now we can move to the renewal of the ATM contract.
Through you, Madam Chair. This report discusses the contract for the ATM that's located in the lower lobby of the building. This vendor that currently supplies the service has been in good standing. This relationship receives passive income to the EECC, requires little staff administration, and mitigates risk and liability to the EECC by having that third-party management. So while we're at the end of the term for this current contract, we are just suggesting this is an ideal arrangement that we have, and it can extend a 3-year extension to the current
Questions, comments?
That report recreation 10-24 entitled ATM contract to be received for information, and that the board grants a 3-year extension to ASD services for the provision and operation of automatic teller machines at the East Elton Community Complex.
Thank you. Mover and second. Member Kaminsky moves, member Leach seconds. All those in favor? Carried. Next, again, from our manager, Rex, it seems it's an update on kind of big celebration, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I promises it's not actually personal. This is a fun one. This is a day update I'm happy to share. Our staff have been hard at work planning another fantastic Canada Day celebration to be held here at the EECC. The focus of this event is providing family-friendly entertainment for the evening. So different features that you'll enjoy: space painting, magicians, live music from Dan the Music Man, CC Scatterly, and we're going to be piloting an open mic event as well. There'll be crafts, food vendors, petting zoos, skating, and fireworks around the evening. We'll again have an official opening ceremony and cake cutting, and invitations to dignitaries have been extended. Thank you for the responses so far. In the event of rain or inclement weather, the fireworks will be rescheduled to July 2nd, but every activity that can be relocated inside will. I want to make sure that that during this time we recognize the ongoing and generous support of the Kids Make Club in supporting and providing the fireworks display. It certainly is a large expense provided by the local service club, and there's a lot of hard work and just people power that goes into that. I also wanted to make sure that I shared tonight that staff have been successful in receiving $4,320 to the Celebrate Candidate Grant to offset the cost of hosting the event. And that we continue to solicit sponsorship and have been successful in obtaining some sponsorship to offset some of the cost of the event. And we look forward to further working in conversations with our partners at the Township of Malahide with connecting with the Manager of Economic Development to further those opportunities to further offset costs going forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Good. Questions or comments?
Madam Chair. That's great. When did the sponsorship notifications go back?
After you, Madam Chair, to remember, we were just notified within the last week and a half, I believe. So the request was in quite early, late fall. I believe it was actually September this past year that the application was put in. Was it November? November, stand corrected. I was close. And again, we just recently received work.
That was for the grant, though. I think you were asking about.
I was sorry, yeah, the sponsorship for local businesses.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. The sponsorship, that's a great question. I do know this time is escaping me through you, Madam Chair. The sponsorship went out within the last couple of months, and we're hoping to wrap up traditionally at the start of May. However, we're happy to pound the pavement and reach out for local businesses for sponsorship right after the event.
I know that the service club I'm a member of didn't receive any notification and would have been interested in participating, but with the May 1st deadline and it only seeing it through this agenda package, we didn't have enough time to get it to my service club. So maybe a broader delivery to more service clubs in the area.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you mentioning that, and that's what we're hoping to, and I'm excited about the partnership with Malahide in assisting, just casting a wider net to those opportunities that we may not have in our back pocket, and assisting staff to connect with those folks if there's development projects or service clubs that we're each and every municipalities communicating with often. I think that would be really beneficial to that. Thanks. And I'm happy to forward it back, but it's not really.
And that's what I wanted to clarify, because I think according to the package, the deadline is passed, but if there are groups still interested, is that still a possibility?
Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely.
Yeah.
The brief note and a follow-up, the recognition of the Kinsman as well. I agree with Susie's comments. Without the Kinsman, we build off their event. That's really they're $25,000 on these fireworks. We definitely build off their generosity. The other thing with the sponsorship, just speak maybe on behalf of Danielle, she does a great job, and she seems to have an easier time with all of the other events except for Canada Day. I don't know if there's a perception up there that it's a government sort of event, and that one we struggle to get sponsors for, which is the perception that's out there that it should be a municipally funded event, but we will take any of the sponsorships that we can get for sure. The other one I wanted to point out is, you'll see we were successful with the grant. That grant has significantly changed since when it first went in. And I was only a part of it this year, so I can't speak what was done in the past, but I wanted to point out that technically the board isn't eligible for sponsorships. One of the member municipalities has to apply for sponsorship, which, as you can imagine, can be tricky. I did have the opportunity to check with the township clerk. She confirmed for me that the township didn't put in a grant for something similar. So one member wasn't spending somewhere else and one member was sharing. It's not in fact what's happening. So what I think we'll do is we'll probably bring another report to the board. When I talk to the grant people, I was led to believe, now of course when you're talking to them, they never say anything straight out, but a joint application would be stronger than a single application. So I think we should probably team up, both member municipalities offer letters of support for the grant application, And we might also be eligible for immediate funds as well. So there was no mention of the joint application this year because I wasn't sure how it worked. Danielle and I were working our way through it. But we'll probably do a report to the board, asking for both member municipalities to confirm that Canada Day at the ECC is their event and that they're good for the application. It just makes sense, you know, for the board to do that.
Thank you for that. That's a good idea. And yeah, if there's still time for sponsorship, I think with Hyde would be happy to promote the opportunity on social media if we're extending the deadline by another week or so. Not. Further comments or questions on that? Member Whitman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to touch on public washrooms. How many we plan on having this year? The idea?
For you, Madam Chair, I believe Danielle placed the order this week. There's one existing, there's one for down there already, and I believe he's ordered 2, if not 3, inclusive of an accessible unit.
Noticed over the years, it's big line at a certain time, but then no pun intended, like the overflow people just go to the parking lot and the car doesn't start. So I don't think that's the reason, but I don't know if we had a couple more or whatever, but there can be 20 people and that waiting to get in, it's just not a great thing. Just a thought, like.
Attendance has increased over the years. Yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair, there may be a benefit, we won't give your burden this year, so you may enjoy your fun.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we have the resolution.
That report recreation 12-24 entitled Events Update 2024 Community Day Celebrations. You received that information.
Movement secondary. Number 18 moves, number each second, all in favor? Here. To our Director of Legislative Services. Correct. So this report is for the RFP for the sound system. So thank you.
Chair. So the board recently approved a number of capital items and staff are beginning to work on those. This is the first one for you today. It is a bit of good news in that we've got a lot of sound equipment in this building that's dates back to the construction of the building that's still functioning. It really does not require replacement. There are a couple in the sound room that we participated in the capital items for we've seen building I'm seeing there. The central stereo unit is very dated. And we also received some concerns from our user groups about connectivity to the system. So the ELFP for today seeks to address those specific concerns and within the approved capital budget amount. We expect the site meeting itself to kind of clarify any further items and ensure that we're really getting the right solution for the board. And we're also including supplementary pricings to be provided to the EECC and the board itself for replacement of HT units in the future from the vendor that we eventually select. With that, any questions?
Questions, comments? It's very well laid out, as you can see, and line is almost memorized.
Chair, so just so I understand it right, they're not gonna replace everything, they're just gonna replace the field, which I think is a good idea because sometimes just because it's older and still working doesn't mean that it's bad. It'll probably be a way better quality than what you buy today, but yeah, I guess that's why.
The question or comment?
Report clerk 11-24 RFP EECC sound system modernization and updates we received for information. and that staff be directed to proceed with advertising and request for proposal for sound system modernizations and upgrades at the East Elgin Community Complex.
Move on second. Member Barbara moves, member Wilson second. Any further comments or questions? None, all those in favor? Carried. So next on the agenda, notice of motion. None. Inquiries by members. Do you not have any closed session items this evening? So we can proceed to our next meeting and adjournment. The next meeting is.
Either the next meeting is July 3rd.
We'll be able to report on the success of Canada Day and the number of. No questions or comments on the picture from the end of the motion.
The EECC board adjourned at 8:17.
Move on second. Second, in favor? And that's carried. See you on Canada Day.